the basic concept of healthy foods, we need to think of it along the lines of kind of a basic pyramid of needs. The first and foremost biggest need we're always going to have is going to be literally our total caloric intake. So actually this plays very well what we're going to talk about tonight. So if we are in a caloric deficit and we're losing weight, if we're in a caloric surplus, we're gaining weight. Now, from there, what macronutrients we're taking in or not taking in are going to influence what type of weight we're gaining and what type of weight we're losing. So if we're doing a lot of body by Haagen-Dazs and we also don't have the resistance training stimulus on top of it, we're going to be gaining a lot more fat mass than lean mass. And then same thing if we're trying to lose weight. All of you guys could lose weight on a diet of nothing but Twinkies, as long as you ate a small enough number of Twinkies each day that you'd be in a deficit. Now, from there, yes, we have a number of vitamins and minerals, those essential nutrients we're going to need. We don't actually need those essential nutrients every single day. We just need them frequently enough that we don't run into situations with deficiencies. So you could effectively survive for a very long period of time off of a diet of nothing but Twinkies and Flintstone vitamins. Would you be that jacked and healthy and be able to perform well as an athlete? No, but you could live. So when you're talking about is something healthy or unhealthy, it often is going to come down to it depends. The only thing that I can flat out tell you nutrient-wise that is not healthy for you is going to be trans fats, specifically the ones that you're going to make through most of the processing methodologies that use partially hydrogenated oils. Those trans fats are pretty much bar none bad for you. That being said, there is a healthy form of trans fat known as vicinic acid and conjugated linoleic acid, CLA. And those are actually good for your health. Most saturated fats can have both positive and negative effects on your health, depending on amounts is going to be the issue. Sugar itself isn't so much bad for your health if you're an athlete, if you're working out and you're burning those calories. If you're Homer Simpson and all you're ever doing is sitting on the couch and then you're putting down a lot of sugar on top of it, that's not good for your health. So be careful of the whole false dichotomy of this is healthy and this is unhealthy. There are a number of foods that are straight up unhealthy, but you can literally die of water intoxication because you drank too much water too quickly. Don't get me wrong, not easy to do, but it's something you can do. So we need to focus more on like, are we getting in all the nutrients we need in levels we need to support whatever our goals are? And that's the first kind of like big block to really focus on. Does that make sense there, Cam? I have not, in fact, tried the Impossible Whopper, but my wife and I tried some of the Impossible Burgers that they had in Costco. My wife's a celiac, so we can't do bread. But we tried one of those that was a non-gluten-based protein source. I mean, it's fine. That's actually something that has to do with this class because obviously with nutrition, you're making choices. And when you're making these choices, thanks to good old capitalism, you're funding things. So by going to Burger King, you're not just funding Burger King, but you're also helping fund all the infrastructure that allows Burger King to exist. So if you do not like factory-fed or factory raised chicken, factory farms effectively, if you don't like homogenized cultures of just nothing but soy or corn, blah, 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 well, you need to not buy products that are using those things. And that means, you have to make choices. If you don't like murdering animals to eat their flesh, which is fine, then yeah, the Impossible Burger and otherwise is a pretty interesting potential technology to where you're not going to have as much cattle and that example, but eventually hopefully other animals that effectively have to be raised in situations that are not great. And you guys can easily look into any of that information. Just go to any pro vegan website and I'm sure you'll be able to find links to something showing you the horrors of the way that a lot of animals live their life so that we can consume them. And unfortunately, a lot of folks try to divorce themselves from the realities of kind of how we are able to subsist and live our lives. And I think it's a good thing to just think critically about it. It's okay to murder an animal for its meat. I mean, it's the reason why I got these canines. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't be meant to be a meat eater, irregardless of how much the Game Changers movie would love to convince you otherwise. But at the same time, we also have the ability to live a varied dietary lifestyle. And you need to make your peace with how you really live your life, as opposed to trying to rationalize it through not exactly logical arguments and a lot of, shall we say, very strong biases. So, I've made my own decisions with what I'm doing nutritionally. You guys can see the choices I make when you see me in person nutritionally. And, I'm not here to tell you guys how to live. I'm just here to tell you to think about it. I mean, if you're cool with let's talk about dairy, guys. I freaking love dairy. How do you get dairy? How do you get the entire food group? What do you got to do?
Milk a cow.
Okay. When do cows need to be milked?
Whenever they lactate.
Yes. When they lactate. When do they lactate, Jake?
After they give birth, right?
Yeah. So what they do is they make sure these cows have kids all the time. They take their kid away from them immediately, so that way they're producing milk, and then try to effectively trick them into lactation for as long as humanly possible, while they're also having to, as a mammal with a brain, having to live with the remorse of no longer having a child. Cool, right? Who wants to go eat some yogurt?
That's why I don't eat dairy.
No, guys, it's not meant to be like we are garbage people and blah, blah, blah. It's instead just think deeply about how those things get here. And I'm not going to sit there and, judge you because you eat dairy, because you choose not to eat dairy. The key is to just really think about it. Like, okay, you're right. You do need to milk a cow. I mean, why are we stealing the lactation from another species? Can you think of any other species on the planet that steals the milk of another species, aside from like when we put them in zoos and make them do funky things they shouldn't do in the wild? But like, you never see a tiger trying to nurse on a gazelle in the wild, much less vice versa. Like, it's interesting that, it's a technology we used of domestication of animals to where we can use that lactation stolen from the mothers for food. And we'll take the male cows, and we'll castrate most of them except for one or two bulls, and then, we'll devour them once they're an appropriate size. Or we'll put them, oh man, you guys know how they make veal?
Oh, that's a very depressing.
I might make some of you guys a vegetarian by the end of the night.
They basically pretty much cripple the calves and then have them lay there and then until they're literally damn near close to death, and then and then that's it.
Purposely keep them anemic and inside of boxes that are too small. They can't really move around. That way you keep the meat really tender. And then on top of that, they usually have to put them in more like wood boxes, because if it's a metal bar, they'll kind of like chew on it and lick on it, and they'll get enough iron that they won't be anemic. So the meat won't be as tender.
Yeah, it's very depressing.
Well, Cam, it's just important to just have a respect for it. So like, when chicken goes bad, like, think about it. Ethically, what you just did is you allowed part of that animal to die for no reason other than end up in a trash can. Like, when you burn whatever food and you throw it out, you allow that plant or that animal to be sacrificed for no reason. And you got to waste all of the wonderful fossil fuels and all the other resources that were required to get that food into your house and then be wasted. So it's an important thing to live deliberately, guys, to think about why we're making the decisions that we make. Because we do have an influence on the world around us, irregardless of how small you guys think you really are. And actually, here's just a weird, and I think I've touched on this before with you guys, but I want you to think about this when it comes to just math and otherwise, and how you might not think you make a difference. But let's, does anyone mind offering themselves up as kind of tribute so I can kind of pick on you? And I mean this in a nice way. It's not meant to be mean.
Sure, I don't care.
Okay, good. Let's pick on Hannah. Okay, and now in the comments, guys, if we had to line up X number of people, how many people do you think we'd have to get together to where you'd find another person that would be eerily similar to Hannah? Like, I'm not saying that they would be like your perfect doppelganger, you know, kind of like a, you know, a twin, but like this person seems like Hannah, but they're not. Like they would be incredibly similar, enough that you could pretty much have them pass as Hannah. What do you think that rate would be? Nice, 1 in 500. Emily's going for 1 in 3,000. Connor's for 1 in 1,000. Oh, now we're up to 5,000. There you go, Hannah. We're starting to think you're a little bit rare, which I think you're pretty rare. There you go. You know what? We're going to go with Hannah's self-appraisal just for fun. We'll say Hannah is a 1 in a million chance. Like you'd have to get 1 million human beings in one spot to have another Hannah. There is over 7 billion people on this planet, which means there is 7,000+ human beings that are nearly the same as Hannah walking the earth. If you and the 7,000 people like you can all make those same decisions, change in whatever way, that's a pretty big influence. And that's someone, and I agree, I think a lot of you guys, especially as you get to know each of you guys, you're very much so your own person. Like no one is I'm sorry, I'm throwing out stereotypes here, but when they refer to like the basic person, you know, is that still like an insult you can use to call somebody basic? But that's a real question. Could someone just say that in the chat, whether or not that's still an insult? Oh, you guys are saying yes. Okay. So I guess, you know, if you think someone is truly basic, that means they're like what, 1 in 5? Like sweet Jesus, there could be more than 1 billion of those humans walking the planet. So if you can get those, oh, good call, Zach. If we're using basic specifically just towards women, well, over half the population is women. So now we're working with like 3.5 billion people. So it's not a full billion of people or 1 billion people that are like that, but it's a pretty big number. So hence, you know, yes, you as one person, it's hard to make a big difference. But if you don't think of yourself just as an individual, but one of many people like you, if you can change in a way that's positive, then we can assume that by extension, there's a number of other human beings out there that can also change for the positive. So, that being said, let's talk about the joys of caloric demands.
Question.
Yeah, what's up?
It's about the food assignment.
Yeah.
Just with the formatting, do you want the shopping list to almost be like a receipt? And then from there, we break it down into what we would eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and the snack?
Most of you guys that did a really good job that I've graded so far is they'd have the food item, the price of the item, and then like calories, grams of protein, carbs, and fat.
Okay.
And so that way you can kind of see across what's going on.
Okay. I was just trying to figure out how I was going to format it.
Yeah, you could do both where you just do like the shopping list, like here's what I would do.
Okay.
And then after that, have the table like here's my basic meal plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can it be like, so I just did it like price per ounce and then how many ounces like I used? Or does it have to be like, do you have to buy it in like the container that it like comes in?
For this one, you just have to buy however much of it. So, you know, there's certain foods that you buy it by container and there's other foods that you buy it per the pound. So that's fine. And I do appreciate you, Jai, doing it in American, aka imperial units for me. Not that I'm not slightly fluent in the metric system, but it does make things a little more complicated for me.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions on the assignment? Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the joys of caloric efficiency. aka effectively how good are we at burning the calories that we ingest, what we're going to do to measure the demands that we have of an individual, how we're going to meet them, aka making sure we're getting enough calories each day, and then some special situations where things act a little funny compared to what you think. And then we're going to go ahead and just have some basic, when we're talking energy, guys, we're typically talking about it in the form of thousands of calories. So that's a big C calorie, or what's known as a kilocalorie, sometimes referred to as a joule. We're really looking at a basic idea of work, how much work that's being done. And from there, with energetic efficiency, effectively, when we do certain movements or exercises, how efficient are we with doing them? And then from there, how many calories we're going to have to consume. So first thing we need to do as well is figure out what's the energy content of food. And this is literally done through what is known as bomb calorimetry, to where literally you put it in a chamber and then you burn it. And we do bomb calorimetry, you literally see how much energy is released by the food you just burned. And if you guys notice on the right-hand column, there's the coefficient of digestibility. So that's when you literally break down that food, how many of those calories in the food you actually get in your body. So notice, guys, your animal proteins are pretty high. We're talking upper 90% for your ability to actually break it down and digest it. When we go into more of our plant-based proteins, it's a little bit lower. We're talking about in the 80s usually. Fats are usually somewhere in the 90s, and then carbohydrates are usually going to be in the 90s as well. We're pretty good at ingesting everything we put inside of ourselves. If you ever have a question of whether or not you digested it, check the toilet. If it shows up a second time and it hasn't changed much, you didn't digest it. If you guys don't know what that means you probably have never had corn before. Now, there's a lot of ways that we can measure energy expenditure. We've talked about a lot of these in exercise physiology. I'm not going to bore you guys with effectively having to memorize each of these. The key is, what are you guys really going to do as far as measuring energy expenditure with people you might work with or yourself? Like, what are you going to use? Good. Heart rate can absolutely be one, Abby, of looking at how high it is or how low it is throughout the day. One of the issues with heart rate is obviously it's influenced by also general stress, which isn't really increasing your caloric demand, and also are you using like caffeine. So it'll make it look like you're burning more calories than you really are. Yes, Jake?
I was going to say activity records.
Yeah, so like how many hours, especially if you're really good at keeping track of what weights you lifted, so you know the general amount of work you did, how many hours you spent practicing playing baseball, how many hours or how much time or yards you did running or doing sprinting conditioning work. Good, good. And the other one that I think you guys are going to probably use is going to be that wonderful accelerometer, where you're going to, I will be right there with the statement from Jai. Accelerometers are going to be a real good one, where you're going to be looking at your effective like daily steps and how much you're moving around, but those have their flaws also. My accelerometer is on my wrist. Obviously I talk with my hands, so it's thinking those are steps. Meanwhile, when I'm doing something, earlier today, Zach and I were dragging the sled. Well, we're dragging the sled by holding on to it with our hands. So during that period of time, it really wasn't tracking that many steps, but we were burning a lot of calories because we're doing something that's very inefficient and requires a lot of energy to perform it. Now, the question we got from Jai, yeah, Stan Efferding, he's a bit of a friend of mine, that you absorb more nutrient from animals with more stomachs. So yeah, steak has multiples. Effectively, the key, one thing to think about with your food, it sounds odd when you're looking at as far as digestibility, is look at the ways that it's trying to avoid being digested. So most of your animals are avoiding trying to be digested by trying not to get murdered in the first place. Now, some of them are highly poisonous, like poison tree frogs and otherwise, that like that's their way of like, don't eat me because you will die. But others are like, I'm just going to try to run from you and never end up being murdered. So once you do get them, the meat's good to go and you can pretty much eat whatever you want. Now, whereas a lot of vegetation, some vegetation is just got a very low caloric yield. It's not really looking to obviously get eaten. Other types of vegetation is looking to get eaten because that's part of its life cycle. So for example, most of your fruits, your berries especially, they literally want to be eaten, and for you to essentially, yeah, for lack of a better term, have a bowel movement somewhere with them that they happen to be in. And because of that, you're going to go ahead and see that, well, now that wonderful seed not only has gone through your stomach acid, which has helped break down part of the seed coat so it can germinate, but it's also in its own fertilizer. So it allows things to grow a lot better. And what's really interesting, if you guys ever notice, like when you're in farm country and otherwise, you typically see kind of like, you know, fruiting plants, so to speak, around like fence lines sometimes. And the reason for that is because literally the birds ate them, pooped them out, and then they grew there. So when it comes to, you know, picking foods that are more easily digest, Stan's got some interesting ideas. I don't fully agree with everything he has out there, but one thing that he definitely does bring up is ease of digestion, because he works with human beings that are doing like the very tail end of crazy high caloric intake. So you've got to be, yeah, he spoke at our state conference. I met him at NSCA National Conference in DC. So yeah, I've got his number. He's a nice guy. He's a very large man. He's probably only like an inch taller than me, but he's probably a foot wider. Like he's a very jacked dude, and super nice guy. Super nice guy. We just sat and talked. We watched Jose Antonio's presentation next to each other, and then talked for about an hour afterwards. So yeah, he's a good dude. He's a good dude. And yeah, so he was the diet coach for Hathor Thorson. And when you get to that size, trying to get him to put in enough calories every single day, it really becomes a hard math problem. In fact, we're going to touch on that at the very end today as kind of an activity for you guys. Now, with the Douglas bag, okay, that is going to be specifically, literally a bag they use to collect gases with. So effectively, you breathe in through essentially a system that allows the air to come in one side and out to go out the other. When it goes out the other, it literally goes into a bag, a Douglas bag. And when the bag fills, you close it, tie it off, and you attach a new one. And you keep doing that, so that way you have literally the gas exchange in each phase of the exercise, both the volume and then the overall balance of carbon dioxide and oxygen. So does that answer your question, both Jai and Nolan? Awesome, guys. Good questions tonight. So, in fact, these are those Douglas bags we just talked about. Here is your basic kind of spirometry, and then here's your nicer, well, it's older now, metabolic cart, kind of like we have in the lab, where you can get an idea of caloric demand of the individual overall. But really, all we're trying to get at is just really how many calories you're burning each day. Now, the vast majority of your calorie burn each day is going to be from the resting metabolic rate. Remember, resting metabolic rate in a perfect world is 12 hours fasting, 8 hours sleep, no caffeine, thermoneutral environment, laying down how many calories you're burning. On top of that, we've got, and I know the book, right now you only see two other things, but there's three. We have got what's known as diet-induced thermogenesis. I prefer to call it thermic effect of food. Either of those are options. And effectively, literally breaking down food, specifically the macronutrient protein, takes energy. And because of that, you're going to burn calories literally just digesting it, and that actually adds to your total energy expenditure each day. You then have your thermic effect of exercise, or exercise energy expenditure. Either way, exercise. And that's the one that we've got the most control of. So we can obviously do more exercise, and that's going to burn more calories. Now, at the same time, notice for a sedentary individual on the graph on the right, most of their calories being burned each day is actually from the resting metabolic rate. A little bit from diet-induced thermogenesis, and then a bit more from the thermic effect of exercise. Where if you look at somebody that's massively physically active, so this is going to be someone that happens to be sorry, Blaine, I'll get to your question in one moment. They are going to have a huge exercise energy expenditure, but to give you an idea, for someone my size, if I wanted to have a graph like this where 60% of my energy expenditure was from exercise, I would literally have to probably at least cover 30 miles on foot that day. Bike 120 or swim 6 miles if I want to have that same type of caloric demand. Now, the fourth one that's not here is what's known as non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's that tapping your feet, that's that jittering, that's that kind of moving around, playing with your pen cap, the natural fidgeting that we do. And effectively, all those four combined gives us our total energy out, how many calories we burn each day. And from there, we're just going to try to take in enough calories to either equate that, or we want to take in more calories than we burn each day so we can gain weight, or the antithesis if we want to lose weight. Now, how would a 24-hour fast affect your resting metabolic rate? Something that short is probably not going to make that big of an effect, but a big thing to keep in mind is your resting metabolic rate is always going to be heavily tied to your total fat-free mass. And so in ways, it's related to your height, your weight, and then obviously your age. So if you lose weight, your resting metabolic rate goes down. As your resting metabolic rate goes down, you literally burn less calories per day. And that's when we talked about those graphs I showed you guys in the beginning of the class. It makes it that much harder to lose weight the further you're going into a really hard diet. And the same thing is true on the other side. It makes it harder and harder to gain weight because as you gain more and more weight, your resting metabolic rate goes up. Now, the other double-edged swords that makes this very difficult when you're trying to lose weight, you're taking less calories. So typically your diet-induced thermogenesis goes down. And because you have a lighter body now, if you're just say running to lose weight, you literally do not have as great of a caloric deficit as you once did. Or sorry, you don't have as heavy as a body as you once did. So because of this, you're not burning as many calories when you're doing that exercise. So between those factors, you're going to be burning less calories. And then the extra one to boot, that's a real pain, is you're going to see much lower non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Literally, you fidget less. You just sit still and hang out and zone out because you're starving, you're hungry. And this is obviously over a long enough period of a diet, but that's where people naturally get that resistance the longer they're going into a weight loss. And the opposite is true. When you're trying to gain weight, you have a heavier body, so you burn more calories doing the same exercise. You are eating more calories, so diet-induced thermogenesis is higher, along with you typically are going to have that increased non-exercise activity thermogenesis. You're just going to be a little fidgetier, you're going to be moving around a little bit more. Yes, we'll go ahead and we'll do one of those later on where we can just use, we'll probably just use like the Mifflin-St. Jeor formula. It's a simple one. It's not too great, but at least gives us an idea of your resting metabolic rate because you need to do that for your wonderful projects. So when we're trying to get an idea of how many calories you're actually burning each day, guys, this is an adaptation from another text where literally here's a basic idea of how many calories each day these different tissues are burning. Notice, yeah, muscle's cool. It burns like 13 kcals per kilogram of it per day. The key is we just have a lot of it, so it actually helps with the resting metabolic rate. Whereas when you look at your major organs that are running all the time, your brain, your liver, your heart, and your kidney, notice, guys, your brain and your liver are actually chewing through a pretty solid amount of calories each day. Your heart is going to be burning a decent amount of calories, and this is going to be someone that's probably more at rest. You're going to have a little bit higher of that metabolic rate, obviously, if you're making your heart work harder because you're doing exercise. And then we are going to have the joys of your renal system, which turns out is filtering your blood on a full-time basis. And that's going to be relatively a lot more set in stone. But overall, once we add in, now we obviously don't have skin here, we don't have the digestive tract, where you don't have bone, which does require a certain amount of energy to have turnover along with your tendons, your connective tissue. So that's where you're going to get effectively that total amount of essential kcals you're going to be chewing through each day, literally just maintaining that life when you happen to be bedridden. So different exercises obviously are going to have much greater caloric demands than others. So if you're looking for things that just have absurdly high caloric demands, the example on the right when we're looking at sports is for specifically athletes doing or it was one athlete doing the Tour de France, literally burning 5,869 calories on a day. Now, this is obviously a very long and a very hard bike race, and these guys typically aren't very big. Notice this guy was only 155.8 pounds, and he chewed through almost 6,000 calories in a day. Now, not that you're going to see, speaking of guys like have for Thorson going out and trying to do the Tour de France, but imagine someone who's only a measly 310 pounds. The idea of chewing through almost 12,000 calories in a day is absurd, but it's obviously quite possible depending on the total volume of work you're going to have somebody do and the total distances you're going to be having them cover. Now, for you guys, if you're looking for a way to kind of figure out your energetic demands of what you're doing, there's some basic breakdowns here in this table that you can go ahead and look at. When it comes to lower limits of energy expenditure, this is where you're going to find individuals that are just completely sedentary, just barely moving whatsoever. And I mean, this literally could be someone who's comatose. Those upper limits, I mean, there's going to be a point at which you literally could not do more physical activity in a given day if you wanted to, but there's examples of people doing ultra marathons, meaning 100+ mile runs in 24 hours. And if you're going and doing over 100 miles in a given day, you figure that your total caloric demand, if you just figure it's that 154-pound European male that uses 100 calories per mile, and you do 100 miles, well, there right there is a nice and quick and easy 10,000 calorie just from exercise. If all you ever did was walk on flat ground, which they probably aren't, not to mention thermic effective food, because they hopefully are going to be eating during it, along with that resting metabolic rate. Now, you are going to have some special situations. When we talk about average caloric intakes, you're going to have some individuals that are taking in way more calories than you suspect to maintain that weight, because they really do have that quote unquote hummingbird metabolism. And sadly enough, you're going to have individuals that have suppressed immune systems from having been effectively on diets for really long periods of times. And examples of that, sadly enough, are typically athletes like gymnasts that literally take in very small amounts of calories. And that's just to maintain their weight. If they eat above it, they gain weight because they do have such a suppressed resting metabolic rate. Abby, I'm not sure if you have any of those examples from your history with women in ballet, but have you ever come across any gals like that that literally dieted that hard for that long that it seemed like they had suppressed themselves?
Yeah, it's quite common. You have a lot of people who go through a 6-hour rehearsal day and they don't eat anything.
Do you ever like passing out, or is this just like a situation normal for them?
I mean, it's normal because, I mean, from a young age, you're just not really encouraged to eat a lot.
Man, that's brutal. Thank you, Abby. So notice, guys, I said before, that was for that 154-pound European male. If you look at the table 4.4, and we'll go on the next one to the second part of it, it scales differently depending on your body weight. So obviously individuals that are smaller aren't going to burn as many calories, and this is going to be noticed per minute for individuals when we compare it both kilogram and then poundage, that someone is going to be burning depending on those body sizes. So I know it stops at the 198 pounds, so obviously if you're larger, we can just do a little wonderful math, and you can use this for your own calculations when you're trying to figure out how many calories that you would actually be burning. Now, keep in mind, notice with the running, the velocity definitely matters. So Jai is fluent in the good old kilometers per minute, so it's gonna be a lot more, minute for doing that number, for doing a full kilometer. But for us to convert into American takes a little bit more, but it does give you an idea of, yeah, if you go faster, you're burning more calories per minute because you're literally covering a greater amount of distance. And then how many calories in theory we're going to be burning when we're doing different types of, notice, swim strokes. And then, you know, the difference between we're just kind of hanging out and we're actually playing tennis. And then the good old walking, my favorite thing. Walking at 5-minute kilometers, that's trucking. We need to get on that level. So now, let's have some fun. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to separate you guys into groups. And we're going to have you guys do some pretty insane caloric breakdowns. One of them is going to be what's known as the J.M. Blakely diet. Now, J.M., the founder of the J.M. Press, was a very good competitive bench presser out of Westside Barbell. And he was known for the diet that he came up with as a way to gain weight that you would do for 1 month, and it would typically net you 20 to 30 pounds. Now, their argument was you wouldn't gain that much fat, but you gain a lot of lean mass. And at the same time, guys, the drug regimes of the West Side Barbell lifters during this period have only been explained to me as epic, meaning steroids, just so we're 100% clear with this one. So this is by no means saying this is a method you should use, but it's going to be a fascinating conversation that I want you guys to go ahead and have. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to divide ourselves into 3 groups. So the first group is going to look at the Jan Blakely diet. So for breakfast, you are going to get up, and the way that this was told is you go to whatever place you want, you buy 4 sandwiches, you buy 4 hash browns, you put the hash brown inside the sandwich with a full packet of mayo, and that's your breakfast. For lunch, you go to a Chinese buffet and you eat for 1 full hour without taking a break. If you have to throw up, you start the watch over again. And then for dinner, when you get home, you eat an entire large pizza with every single topping you can, and then you pour a full cup of oil on top of the pizza on top before you start to eat it. Any oil will do. Olive, castor, just make sure it's not motor oil. And then throughout the day, you eat candy bars. So that way you constantly keep insulin up as a way to help you gain weight. Now, this is not what one would call safe or reasonable or rational, but the goal here is to get swole. So I'm going to have the first group is going to be in charge of breaking down this Jan Blakely diet. Now, the second group is going to do what Dan John refers to as his eat anything you want diet, which is very simple. You can eat anything you want after you have consumed 2 pounds of broccoli, 1 pound of Granny Smith apples, 1 pound of wild salmon, 2 pounds of celery, 1 pound of romaine lettuce, 1 pound of peppers, green, red, yellow, whatever you're in the mood for, drank a full gallon of water, had 1 pound of kale, and an entire pound of butternut squash. And then after that, you can eat anything you want. Now, who's going to have a lot of room to eat anything after they've had to have 10 pounds of actual food in a given day and 8 pounds of water? That would impress me. But that's what we're going to go ahead and do. And since Jai is looking at the wonderful lifestyle, or not lifestyle, but the vertical diet, let's have some fun there. So the basic concepts between it and there's is that you effectively get most of your calories each day from red meat and white rice. And then on top of that, you take in a variety of different foods for overall health, meaning you eat like 1 orange, you have a couple whole eggs for the choline and some of the other healthy vitamins and minerals you're going to find in there. You do a little bit of cranberry juice, actually for more of the iodine, so for the liver health and so on. And I'll go ahead and I'll put that below. So after 1 orange, 4 ounces cranberry juice, 2 carrots, and 4 whole eggs. Fill in the rest with 50-50 red meat and the joys of white rice. Am I missing anything on there, Jai? I feel like that was pretty much the basic load out there.
He always talks about beef stock or bone broth.
Ah, yes, yes. Thank you. You're not seeing the diets on your slides. These are updates that I've made, Sean. So can you see the video, the screen sharing that I'm currently doing? Okay, so we'll base it on that. And you guys are still going to work together. So the idea is that someone's going to take one piece, someone's going to take another. Now, just for fun, we're going to go ahead and do a 4th group. Okay? And for that 4th group, effectively, what I want you guys to do is take someone like, we'll take, and I keep picking on Hepworth Orson. Give me somebody else who's kind of popular in the, you know, the being freaking strong and massive world right now.
Ryan Shaw.
Fair enough. I like it. So let's go with Brian Shaw, and you guys will be able to do a little bit of the wonders of Googles of how many calories he's doing each day. And if your goal as that group is to hit his macro and his protein requirements each day with only using whole foods that are all vegan. Now, when I say whole foods, that means you can't use vegan ice cream. You can't use vegan cookies. You can't use vegan protein powder. You've got to use the actual fruits, vegetables, grains to get that many calories in them. Larry Wheels is not a bad idea, Nolan, but we'll go ahead and we'll go with the Brian Shaw one, but thank you for that idea. So if you're in group one, because it's going to randomize it, you're going to be doing the J.M. Blakely diet. So I want you guys to, in your group, one person's in charge of figuring out the breakfast. So you figure out the sandwiches, hash browns, the total calories, okay? And then we're going to go carbohydrates, proteins, and fats per the meal. Then someone's going to take care of the lunch, the dinner, the snack. Dan John, each of you guys is going to take one of those foods, break it down, obviously, by, once again, calories, proteins, carbs, fats. And then we're going to total it out. So you guys should be chatting it back and forth, literally typing it so that when we come back together, you can post it up and we can all look at it. And then one of you guys is going to be, or another group is going to be doing this wonderful diet for the joys of the Stan Efferding for HAP4 and figure out his total caloric demand. You should be able to just find a Google reference. Doesn't have to be high end, like here's what they say he's taking in. So someone's just going to figure out the basic calories in the orange juice, cranberries, whole eggs, and the carrots. There's probably some other components there that I'm forgetting. I know he likes low raffinose vegetables, so usually he'll throw in like some peppers, and he tries to avoid some other things. And from there, you guys are going to have to figure out the calories in the rice, calories in the steak, how much of that would you have to eat in a given day to hit those demands. And then my fourth group, remember, you've got to figure out that Google search for Brian Shaw. And you guys got to figure out how many calories he needs to take in of vegan whole foods. So I suggest one of you guys looks for a good protein source. Carb sources are pretty easy. They're called potatoes. You got rice. You got a lot of other grains you can potentially use. And then someone's got to find a good source of fats, which is probably going to be a whole lot of nuts and maybe some avocados. So you guys feel good of where you're going for group 1, 2, 3, or 4, getting randomized into it?
So we just need to find how many calories are in the diet.
It depends on the one. The JM and the Dan John, both of those are going to be solving for how many calories that you come up with from just going through those foods. Calories is one thing, but I also want you guys to figure out the total grams of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Sound good, Jai?
Yep.
All right, guys, have fun with this. And by the way, the JM Blakely diet is just freaking terrifying. So I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with that one, because it's epic. All right, have fun, guys. All right, guys. So, how'd it go? Throw up in the chat what you guys came up with, and let's break it down. Remember, for Brian Shaw, you guys are supposed to be going as a vegan, so red meat's kind of out. Oh God, 56 ounces of tofu? That sounds horrible. Okay. So Abby, for you guys, remember that's half four, so he's probably gonna need about 5,000 calories worth of that per day. So how much in actual volume of ground beef and white rice does that end up actually being?
Can you say that again?
Yeah, no worries. So for half four, he's probably gonna need like 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day, maybe even more than that. So you've got your base of, the cranberry juice, the carrots, the orange, the eggs, and the bone broth. But then on top of that, you'd have to throw in all of the extra. You'd have to throw in the rest of the calories each day from beef and white rice. So, I mean, you figure all you have to do is take what you currently have, subtract that, so it's going to be pulling out 460. That's easy. So you figure that leaves you with, you've only got 534 calories. So then the rest would have to be for red meat. So your servings there would end up being 1, 2, 3. Oh, Jesus. That's a hell of a day. You'd have to do about 12 servings. Yeah, about 10 to maybe 12 servings of the white rice and the beef. So just kind of let us know how much that is. Nice. Good job breaking down, eating all of the veggies and everything else. So altogether, how many calories would that be when you actually summed up all of your vegetable choices? Or not vegetable choices, but all the diet for the Dan John diet. Oh, dear God, Hannah. That's one heck of a lunch. What did you come up with for your choices for the Chinese food there?
So I looked up Panda Express and I was like, okay, what if Panda Express was a buffet and let's say he ate like 4 plates of food in an hour? So I picked one side each, that's fried rice, chow mein, super greens, and brown steamed rice. And then my 4 entrees were orange chicken, grilled teriyaki chicken, honey walnut shrimp, and kung pao chicken.
Way to live life.
So it's not
Way to
boring.
live life. Wow, that's it? All that? Wow. So good job, group 2. And that's usually about what we've come up with in the past whenever you do that. Oh man, that's 760 calories from just doing 4 of those wonderful bars through the day, plus the 2,980. So just one meal in the snacks, you're sitting at a very healthy 3,740 calories on the day. And we're still waiting on, oh dear God. And then we've got dinner, which gives us another 27K. So we're up to a little over 5,400 calories, and we haven't seen breakfast yet. Oh, and the vegetable is sweet Jesus. So you take the 54 and you add the 1920, and now we're getting really close to 74, but we're probably still about 7,300 calories. Where's breakfast? We might have a 10K day right there. Also, so we're clear, none of you will get extra credit for doing this to your body. That's just inhumane. I can't ethically do it. But, and this is by no means my joke, and I'm not sure how many of you heard it before, but remember, every pizza is a personal pizza if you believe in yourself.
Boo.
You know what, Hannah? Ask me about the Pointersaurus challenge. I'll tell you about that story at some point. That was a lot of fun until it wasn't. All right, so we're still waiting on the J.M. Blakely breakfast and the rest of the breakdown for the Brian Shaw diet.
I'm doing the breakfast. I just I'm doing a little bit more math. I'm almost done.
Okay, thank you, Trey.
I'm kind of struggling to like get foods to substitute to be vegan.
It's hard. It's not easy. Where are you coming in with some issues there, Jai? Let's see if I can help you.
So for breakfast, he has Cinnamon Toast Crunch, 8 eggs, and peanut butter.
Mm-hmm.
And then second meal is protein shake, 2 granola bars, more peanut butter. Third meal is meat and pasta, which is a pound of organic grass-fed beef, and then pasta and sauce. Fourth meal, another protein shake with unsweetened almond milk, frozen organic blueberries, more peanut butter. Fifth meal, what's that? Oh, organic turkey, rice and broccoli. Sixth meal is a pasta from a pizzeria. It just tells you like it's 3,400 calories. And then cheesecake. 4 slices of cheesecake.
Oh, it's good to be a heavyweight lifter. Yeah, I'd really think you just need to pound down. Oh, damn. That's one heck of a breakfast. Yes, the J.M. Blakely diet for you guys, when you roll all that over an entire day, that's going to literally be over 10,000 calories. I do not know how you don't gain weight on that type of diet. Brutal. And you gave yourself some variety. At least you didn't have to do the same breakfast sandwich for each of those meals. So I guess that's kind of nice. Now, getting back to Jai and what he's doing, honestly, if you're trying to put down that many calories, you pretty much need to have him just pounding down avocados like it's his job. And then outside of throwing down the avocados, as far as caloric density, you'd be trying to throw down a lot of nuts. He's obviously already doing peanut butter, so you could just add more of it. And then, yeah, the protein shakes are out. So you would just end up doing an insane volume of things like potatoes, quinoa is a little bit higher of a protein yield. Obviously, tofu is an option, but notice, guys, that's processed. So you're still not getting the same type of, equivalent as you did previously. I mean, there are some vegetables you can find that have got a little bit more protein yield, but nuts is probably your best bet, but you're still getting a huge yield of fat with each of those servings. So it literally gets to become just a little too daunting volume of food to really try to maintain a body size that size if you're really eating organic and pure.
Well, it's 12,000 calories a day, 705 grams of protein, 1,400 grams of carbs, 400 grams of fat.
And Brian Shaw is what, 400 something pounds?
I don't know. Big.
Fair. Very fair. Oh, thank you, Ryan, for clarifying that stuff with the Dan, John, and Ian. Yeah, that's a large human. That's a very large human. So any questions with all of that before we're going to finish with actually Blaine's question from earlier? Anything else you guys would like to talk on other than, for the love of God, don't do these things to you? God, I miss pizza eating contests. Can you be in the same room as people? That was nice. But you guys good? Ready to roll? Move on? Take that as a maybe. Awesome. So Remember, guys, at the end of the day, this is something that's from Renaissance periodization, but I think it's a great graphical explanation. A lot of people start to immediately focus on the supplements, and that's what they think is going to be the big difference between their goals when it comes to gaining and losing weight. It's all here. Are we getting enough calories? Are we not getting enough calories? If we understand our calories in and out, we're going to be sitting in a good spot. From there, yeah, let's talk about our macronutrients. Are we getting enough protein, carbs, and fats throughout the day? Then we're going to be interested in nutrient timing. So are we timing those carbs well around workouts? Are we spacing the protein pretty evenly throughout the day? Are we keeping fat away from workouts? All which is going to allow us to perform better. So it's not just our body comp, but it's also recovery. And then food composition. So this is going to be making better decisions with our food sources. So instead of doing our carbs by just pounding down like stick after stick or pixie sticks and just, taking a whole lot of raw sugar, yeah, let's eat some potatoes. Let's eat some rice. Let's eat some food that's got some also vitamins and minerals and maybe even some other macronutrients in there that's going to help our overall health. And yes, maybe supplementation is going to help a little bit. Now, of course, you throw this out the window real fast when you start talking about people abusing Clen, Tren, anabolic steroids, thyroid medications, Cytomel, and things along those lines. But yeah, I'm not going to teach you guys how to do that in this class. If you want to talk about drugs, we can talk about it in person, but I'm not going to record it and put on the internet. So, talked about calories. It's really just increasing water by 1 degree centigrade. Woohoo. And remember, we're just looking for balance. We're trying to make sure that all the amount of calories we're bringing in each day, in theory, equals all the calories that are going out each day. Remember, not just thermic effect food, physical activity, and the rest of metabolic rate. We're also remembering non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And our body is constantly going to be going to where our average is at. Meaning, if we have a great diet 6 days of the week, but on that 7th day you decide to do the Jan Blakely diet, well, for that overall week, you might lose a pound, you might gain a pound, or you might stay the same because you go to where your average is. It's a thing that I think a lot of you guys might gloss over, not really think about deeply, but literally the current body weight you are is the exact body weight you'd be if you had been able to measure every single thing you ate or drank your entire life along with all of your physical activity. That would get you to this exact body size you're currently at. So if we want to have a smaller body, we need to, on average, over the long haul, be taking in less calories than we're burning. Which means, yeah, we can have days where we're in a surplus. We can have days where we just break even. But our average needs to be that we're in a deficit. Now, how we create that deficit, and otherwise we're going to talk about later in this class. But just understanding that's the big rock. That's the thing to keep in mind. So we should have an idea for how the heck we're going to figure out our resting body mass. Now, for Jai, he can just immediately start plugging away because, he speaks a real, actual system of units. Unfortunately, the rest of us, we grew up in America. So you're going to take your body weight in pounds and divide by 2.2 to get kilograms, okay? And then in order to get your height in inches, divide or multiply by 2.54 to get centimeters. And then you take, in order to convert your age into years from imperial to metrics, you multiply it by 1. So from there, obviously notice there's different gendered formulas, and this is from the 80s, so it's not the greatest, but it's something you can use for now. The first thing I want you guys to do is run these formulas and figure out what your BMR is going to be, and then from there, you can go ahead and throw up the numbers you get in the chat. Make sure you follow your order of operations. So you do the 13.397 if you're male, multiply that by your weight, hit enter, write that down. Then clear out your calculator, 4.799 multiplied by your height in centimeters, enter, get that number, write it down. And then 5.677 multiplied by your age, enter, figure out the number, write it down. Then sum up the 88.362 plus the sum you got from your weight plus the sum you got from the height formula, and then subtract the number you got from the age. Now, the reason you add the weight and the height is you figure a bigger and heavier body uses more calories. The reason you subtract for age is there's a age-associated decline in your lean body mass, which means that you typically are going to have more fat mass, so you're going to have less metabolically active tissue, and because of that, your basal metabolic rate is going to be lower. And then obviously notice it's gendered, where the expectation is that your average female overall is actually going to have a lower energy expenditure than your average male. But it's not perfect. Once we get that, then we'll talk about the exercise side of it. So go ahead and solve for that, guys, and go ahead and put up the numbers you're getting into the chat. All right. Nice, Cam. Your numbers look like they might be a little low, but that still looks pretty close to what it probably should be. Hannah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Josh, yours looks about good. Abby, yours looks about good. Yeah. Emily, Madison, both you guys, it looks about good. There you go. iPhone, I have no idea who you are, so I have no context there. Connor, that looks about good. Yeah, Jake, that looks about right. Okay, cool. Caitlin, yes, you are nowhere near that big. You probably, instead of dividing your weight by 2.2, you probably multiplied it by 2.2. And then that made everything's real funky real fast. Yeah, Allison, that could be right.
Oh, this man is a fool.
Yep. April, you probably didn't add things in. You probably just had a little order of operations. Most of us are going to be somewhere between, just over 1,000 to in the mid 2,000s. So like for me, because I'm 5'10" on a really good day, and then also 210. I was 210 today in the gym. So that means my body weight is, or my BMR is probably around 2,000 plus calories. Yeah, no, thank you, Ed. Thank you. You established it. You're good. And yeah, Sean, that looks about accurate because you're a tall guy. But notice it's not meant to be perfect. So yeah, I would say, Allison, just recheck your math, and then yeah, Caitlin, whenever you can get it. So now from there, guys, the numbers you got, along with, remember, Cam, you need to be rechecking yours. Then we would then multiply it by one of these factors depending on our activity levels. So little to no exercise, meaning we're talking pretty sedentary, you take that number and multiply by 1.2. When it's talking about light, moderate, and heavy exercise, consider that taking your BMR and then multiply, and saying, when you say 1 to 3 days per week, that's considered to be 1 hard hour of cardio per week. Does that make sense? So, or like, in order for that to count as the exercise. So if you're heavy exercise, that means you're doing pretty much a hard hour of cardio 7 days a week. And then heavy exercise, beyond that, obviously now we're talking about doing extra sessions. So I mean, when they say heavy exercise and very heavy, that's very heavy, you're talking like solid 2 days. Caitlin, looks good. That looks right. Whereas like most of us are probably more sitting in that moderate to light exercise, just because, yeah, we lift weights and things along those lines, but it's not really burning as many calories as we think. But notice, guys, this is from the 80s, and the age demographics they were working with is different than you guys, because you guys are on average obviously younger than a lot of the folks you're going to be working with. So there's other formulas we can use. The Mifflin St. Jeor is a much easier one to use. The accuracy with any of these guys is take what the numbers that we just came up with and literally multiply them by 1.2, and that could be your high end, or multiply them by 0.8, and that could be your low end. Now, I like the Cash McCardle because it's literally taking that lean body mass. So however much lean body mass you have, multiplying it by 21.6, and then adding 370, and that's your total caloric demands for the day. So that tends to be a bit better of an idea because it's actually addressing, the types of tissue that you can flex and the types of tissue that jiggles because it doesn't use as many calories. Zach, you are not that small, buddy. I would expect yours to be higher than that also. So just keep in mind, guys, this is when you say like you did your BMR calculations, you can use this one for it. And you just have to go ahead and make some modifications when you do it again for your next 4-day dietary and exercise capture that you do. Because, your weight might change, you might gain a weight, you might lose weight, that's fine. So you're going to have a slightly different BMR. But now you guys have got the first BMR done. Blaine, did you already, yeah, you already put yours up there. So does that kind of answer your question on how we can calculate it? And you guys feel pretty good about all this? Awesome. So that's all I got for you guys tonight of things that I wanted to talk about. I apologize for bringing you guys down with the Debbie Downer of the wonders of in order to live, things have to die. But I always want to have good, honest conversations about nutrition and then the choices we're making. Okay, so a good question we have right now is, if I want to track my macros, what is the best or the easiest way? Okay, now for a lot of folks that have taken this class in the past, it seems using something like MyFitnessPal seems to be things that are really easy for folks to track. Is to go ahead and use something like that to get an idea of how many calories you're taking in each day. You can always, and I use this term as kind of a taking the easy way, or what is, how to say, it's in a solution, but it's not a particular pretty one. I call it the D-bag method. You could literally just eat out of nothing but effectively boxes. So you just eat one serving, you have a breakfast Hot Pocket for breakfast. You have another type of Hot Pockets for lunch. And then for dinner, you have a microwavable dinner. All of the macros are on the boxes. All you have to do is write those down and use them. That's it. Takes care of it for you. Is it the healthiest diet? No. Is it the cheapest diet? No, but it's a solution. Not a great one, but it's something you can do. So, for just about everybody, you're just looking for whatever method you can stick to. So some folks like to literally weigh and measure every single thing they eat or drink. That's not me. And other folks, the thing that I like doing is developing a system. So what you're trying to do is this is the basic type of breakfast I do, this is the basic type of lunch I do, and setting things up so it's really easy to repeat these things. So you don't have to worry about one day you ate a lot, one day you ate a little. You just know how much you're going to do each day. Nice. Blaine, which tracking app do you like to use? Like I said, MyFitnessPal seems to work. And plus, guys, at the end of the semester, whenever you're doing your thing, you can export most of the data. It's not going to give you everything. You're not going to get all the vitamins and minerals you're going to need for your report, but it will give you your protein, carbs, and fats. So a lot of the work will be done. Okay, there you go. So there's another person who's using MyFitnessPal. Honestly, I've never used it once in my life. Whenever I do any of this stuff and I'm getting hardcore with my tracking, I literally just make an Excel file, or I literally keep a food physical journal and write in it. But you know, the key is you just got to figure out what works for you guys. Like it's obviously it's simple, you know, when we talk through these things, but applying it for, you know, 2 to 5 or more meals per day and making sure that you're always keeping good records, that's where it becomes more daunting. And so, you know, figure out what method is going to work for you and then just keep applying. That's the big key. So, yeah, like I said, just figure out, and then it's not just what you can do for 1 week, but it's something you can sustain for years or at least months. Like, what's the methodology that you can use to get the weight off if you're trying to lose weight, or get the weight on if you're trying to gain weight? Because whatever method you use to lose the weight or gain the weight is very similar to the same methods you're going to have to use to keep the weight on or keep the weight off. So if you don't like the things you have to do to put that weight on and keep it on, then it might not be for you. And that's okay. Other folks, same thing. It's a lot of work for some folks to lose weight. Like if I was to give you guys my full dietary breakdown of like literally everything I eat in a given day, and the reality that it's very easy for me to be over 200 pounds, you'd probably almost think I was lying from how little I have to eat. I do naturally have a slow metabolism, which is fine. I know it. I live with it. I try to make sure most of the weight that I have, I can flex, not as much of it jiggles. And that's me. That's my choice. That's how I live my life, thanks to the genetics that I obviously inherited. Now, for other folks, you got to figure out, you know, what works. I have one friend that he pushed his body weight up to 235 at one point, and he was a heck of a good power lifter, even did bodybuilding shows and things along those lines. He was eating 6 times a day, nearly nauseous all the time, just to get his body weight up to that size. Another friend, he had to chew so much because he was trying to gain weight. He started to almost get like TMJ, and his teeth were getting loose in his head from literally all the chewing he was doing. So, you know, some folks are going to have to do those exceptions, going really far to one end of the spectrum or the other. And you got to think about like what's really feasible, what's something I really want to maintain. So, in the words of the Venerable Ice Cube, man, life's not a track meet, it's a marathon. So, any other questions that I can help clarify for you guys? We're going to do one more week of lecturing, and then you guys are going to have your first exam. Well, seeing as how it is very quiet right now, I want you guys to have a great night. Stay safe out there, and I will see you guys next week. Make sure you're staying on top of all of the assignments online, and look forward to seeing you guys then. All right.